On behalf of the First Lady and the entire Trump family, I want to wish all Americans a very, very happy Thanksgiving. It's a great time of the year. Today, we continue a time-honored American tradition. Well, that's a well-trained turkey.
This is Today As It Happened. Good Tuesday evening to you. I'm Stephanie Liebergen here with your chronological look at the biggest events and stories of the day, from the annual turkey pardon at the White House to new developments in peace talks between Russia and Ukraine. Let's dive in. Ukraine's National Security Secretary wrote on social media that he now looks forward to organizing a trip for President Volodymyr Zelenskyy to visit the U.S. to finalize details with President Trump. Scripps News international correspondent Stuart Smith is joining us live from London to dig into this reported deal a little bit more. So, Stuart, what exactly can you tell us about what might be in this deal?
Well, I think it's quite not as certain as the initial headlines make out. What it is at the moment is less a deal and more of a draft, and it does represent progress, that's for sure. It seems that, and this has been very hard to get to, Ukraine, the United States and European allies are all on the same page with the bones of a deal. The Ukrainians put it like this. They said that they supported the essence of the US-Ukraine draft peace plan, and there was a common understanding on the core terms. The White House puts it like this, saying there's been tremendous progress, but there are still a few delicate but not insurmountable details to be discussed between President Trump and President Zelenskyy in person in the United States, something that the Ukrainians hope can happen before the end of November, if not by Thanksgiving, which was the initial suggestion of a timeline. Now, what those delicate details might be are effectively the most delicate details that could possibly be discussed. We're talking here about territorial concessions, limits on the size of the Ukrainian military, and other concessions that Ukraine would have to make to Russia that only the president believes he can talk to President Trump in person about. But as to what that plan looks like, right now, we don't know. It's being dubbed the 19-point peace plan. This is different to the 28-point peace plan that we saw at the weekend. It's been thrashed out with European allies, Ukraine and the United States, and represents an agreement of sorts between them. What it doesn't represent is an agreement yet with Russia.
Well, Stuart, you've spent years reporting from Moscow, so what is the likelihood that Russia is also willing to get on board with whatever, the European Union allies in Ukraine and the U.S. might agree to? But Russia is still a key factor that would need to agree to this deal as well in order to make it a reality.
Absolutely, it would. And if you've been watching this for any length of time like I have, you'll see that the closer it seems Europe, the US and Ukraine get to an agreement, the further away it appears to get from Russia. Similarly, when Russia and the United States, like at that Alaska summit, tend to be closer together, it seems to push the Europeans and the Ukrainians away. That's why it makes it so hard. And so if this plan doesn't go through, which it may not, Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, is already looking very cautious about this latest development, about whether this is really in Russia's interest. Likely Moscow will reject it, though likely not formally. It often tends to try and defer the blame for any ending of talks with other parties, but also it's significant to note that still Moscow does not feel any level of pressure that would force it into making concessions it doesn't see as valuable to the country. There's no indication that Putin wants to wrap up this war, nor that there is any imminent threat to, for example, Ukraine having great success on the battlefield. So if it doesn't fit Moscow's interests, then it's unlikely this deal would pass in the current conditions. And of course, if it doesn't fit Moscow's interests, then Ukraine might not agree to it either.
Certainly a thorny situation. Scripps News international correspondent Stuart Smith, live from London. Thank you for breaking down where we sat today on this deal and then what might be coming up next. And now, let's take a look at some of our other top headlines of the day. Paris police have arrested 4 more people in connection with the October jewel heist at the Louvre. 2 men and 2 women were taken into custody this morning. That's in addition to 4 people initially arrested in the theft of over $102 million worth of jewels. That jewelry has still not been recovered. This holiday, gas prices are near the lowest level in 4 years. Oklahoma, they're the lucky ones with the lowest average price, about $2.50 a gallon. The national average is about $3.06 a gallon. Prices today about the same as they were in November of last year, but they are notably lower than 2022 when gas prices spiked after Russia invaded Ukraine and the U.S. was still dealing with the economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. And how's this for lucky? While cleaning out their mom's attic, three brothers discovered an original copy of the first issued Superman, and now they're going to split a fortune. A Texas auction house just sold the comic book for $9.12 million, making it the most expensive ever sold. Their mother told her children prior to her passing that she and her siblings had collected some valuable comic books while they were little, just before World War II. The brothers came across the 1939 comic book in a box while they were cleaning out their late mother's home in San Francisco. Coming up on Today As It Happened.
A man named Sleepy Joe Biden, he used an auto pen last year for the turkey's pardon. So I have the official duty to determine, and I have determined that last year's turkey pardons are totally invalid, as are the pardons of about every other person that was pardoned other than, where's Hunter?
Hello, everybody. We have Waddle. 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 Hi, guys.
Any comments on Ukraine?
Welcome back to Today As It Happened. Let's check back in on our daily briefing of today's top stories. Happening right now at the White House, President Donald Trump preparing for the 78th annual National Turkey Pardon Ceremony. Let's listen in.
With matching stone to the White House. If this were grass today, you'd be sinking into the mud like they've done for many years, and you would be very unhappy. Please, thank you very much. This was a big day. It's a pardon day for a very important beast. On behalf of the First Lady and the entire Trump family, I want to wish all Americans a very, very happy Thanksgiving. It's a great time of the year, and our country is doing really well, economically, like we've never done before. Today, we continue a time-honored American tradition. Well, that's a well-trained turkey. See how happy he is? In a few moments, I will grant a full, absolute, and unconditional presidential pardon to two handsome Thanksgiving turkeys, and this is their lucky day. This is a lucky day for them. But before going any further, I want to make an important announcement, because you remember last year, after a thorough and very rigorous investigation by Pam Bondi and all of the people at Department of Justice, the FBI, the CIA, the White House Counsel's Office, and the Department of Everything. We have a Department of Everything. You know what that is? I think that's called the White House. Into a terrible situation caused by a man named Sleepy Joe Biden. He used an auto pen last year for the turkey's pardon. So I have the official duty to determine, and I have determined that last year's turkey pardons are totally invalid, as are the pardons of about every other person that was pardoned other than, where's Hunter? No, Hunter's was good. That was the one pardon, Pam, that was good, right? The rest of them are all invalid. I don't know what the hell you're going to do about that, but that's, now we're going to take a little of the joking. That is a mess. But they're hereby null and void. The turkeys known as Peach and Blossom last year have been located, and they were on their way to be processed, in other words, to be killed. But I have stopped that journey, and I am officially pardoning them, and they will not be served for Thanksgiving dinner. We saved them in the nick of time. This one has plenty of time, but they were saved in the nick of time. So once again, Melania, thank you for doing such a great job and being such a great First Lady. And now let's go and give Waddle. Waddle, by the way, is missing in action, but that's okay. We'll pretend Waddle is here. The gift that they've been waiting for. And I'll move over and I will just say, very nicely. Gobble your pardon. Come on, let's say it in front of Gobble. Thank you very much, everybody. Anyway, are you ready? Gobble, I just want to tell you this very important. You are hereby unconditionally pardoned. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. That's good. Beautiful. That's nice. Who would want to harm this beautiful bird? That's good. That's good. Thank you very much. Fantastic job. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody.
And that is President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump at the White House in the Rose Garden for the annual National Turkey Pardoning Ceremony, something that has been happening. The tradition as we know it now dates back to President George H.W. Bush. This year's two turkeys, Gobble and Waddle, will enjoy some luxury hotel accommodations while they are here in D.C., and they have been training their whole lives for this, making sure they were ready for the lights and the big crowds that come with being the national turkey. We're going to keep our eyes on anything else coming out of the White House as the President and First Lady get ready to head to Florida for the weekend. And now let's take a look at some of our other top headlines of the day. Hitting the road for Thanksgiving may be a bit cheaper than it was last year. According to AAA, the national average for a gallon of regular gas is about $3.05, but experts say the cost might drop a few cents more as we get closer to Thanksgiving, giving drivers potentially the lowest Thanksgiving gas prices since 2020. Senator Jim Justice of West Virginia has agreed to pay more than $5 million in overdue personal taxes. An attorney for the senator worked out an agreement with the federal government to have the former billionaire repay the money. This is the latest in a series of financial issues the senator has faced for more than a decade. People near Houston, Texas are cleaning up after a tornado touched down on Monday. Pictures and drone videos show damaged roof and scattered debris across yards. The storm damaged more than 100 homes, mostly in the Memorial Northwest neighborhood. Now, despite the widespread damage, there are no reports of major injuries. We'll be right back in just a minute as we continue tracking today's top news. Senator Mark Kelly says he will not be silenced or intimidated by President Trump's Defense Department. I'm Scripps News' Stephanie Lieberman in Washington. The senator's comments come after the Pentagon opened an investigation into alleged misconduct after Kelly and 5 other Democratic lawmakers released a video urging service members to defend the Constitution and refuse illegal orders. Democrats have criticized the president's deployment of the National Guard to American cities and his strikes on alleged drug smuggling boats in the Caribbean. Trump accused the lawmakers of seditious behavior punishable by death. Israel says Palestinian militants have handed over human remains to the Red Cross, which will deliver them to the Israeli military. It was not immediately clear if the remains were one of the 3 remaining hostages in the Gaza Strip. The remains will undergo forensic testing and identification in Israel. The handover is part of last month's fragile ceasefire that has held despite Israeli strikes on Gaza, mounting Palestinian casualties, and accusations of violence and violations from both sides.
Now to the economy, and lots of you taking stock as to where the economy stands, especially as we head into the final stretch of the year, what it means for both Main Street and for Wall Street. New data today painting a mixed picture, rising producer prices, weakening consumer confidence, and fresh signs of strain in the housing market. Scripps News business and tech correspondent Mara Barrett is tracking all of it for us. And Mara, some of the data released today was delayed due to the government shutdown. How do the results stack up against what we know about how Americans are feeling, especially with prices going up?
Del, I think that's the key takeaway here is that there is a very big gap when it comes to consumer sentiment and what this data that we are digging through today is really showing us. And I will say, even so, looking through the economic data, it is a mixed bag. But we did get new polling out, getting a better sense of what Americans are really stressed about this week, listing out their top affordability concerns. And I don't think this will necessarily come as a surprise, but 45% of Americans saying that groceries is one of their biggest stressors. Think about everyone trying to pack up their Thanksgiving meal right now and check out at the cash register without being too shocked by prices. However, we do know prices for that have gone up. The next on the list is housing, healthcare, and then those rising utility bills. People across the board, majority of respondents saying that even in just the last couple of weeks, they feel like prices on these items are going up. And so that's why we're seeing the sentiment we're seeing from people directly conflicts with some of the data that was released. And I think it's important to mention that a lot of this data was delayed in how it was released because of the government shutdown. And so we got the producer price index, consumer confidence, a few other reports. I'll break it down for you really quickly, but basically the key takeaways that I'm looking at with this data is producer price index did tick up about 0.3%. That's a bigger jump than last month. And this indicator specifically looks at inflation, what companies, businesses are paying in order to get their products made. If they have to pay more to produce the things that people are buying, that often trickles down to the consumer. That's why we see prices going up. And then that then impacts consumer confidence. And the report we're seeing in terms of consumer confidence was a very sharp decline. It's actually the lowest that we've seen since April, which is when President Trump announced those tariffs. There's a lot of uncertainty around that. We're seeing that impact on these prices right now. There were a lot of mentions around pessimism around the government shutdown, though, I should note. So we could see that bounce back a little bit in the December consumer confidence report. We also got some numbers around home sales. That's actually up 2%, probably due to the adjusted, a little bit of a lower mortgage rate we've been seeing. However, a new Zillow report did find that in the last year, half of homes across the U.S. actually dropped in value. So that's obviously not good news if you're looking to sell your house, contributing to that consumer confidence. And then finally, curiously, this is where we get the mixed bag of it all, retail sales are actually up. And this is the fourth month in a row that we've been seeing that. And so this is a lot of key data that analysts, economists, Federal Reserve have all been waiting for because of that delay in the government shutdown. But it does not paint a very confident picture of the state of the economy, Del.
Mara, as long as those retail sales don't include the price of a turkey. I went looking yesterday for a turkey. Good luck with that. The Fed meeting in just a couple of weeks. What is the outlook now for whether we'll see another rate cut? And also, how does that fit into speculation of a housing and looming recession?
It is very much, again, unfortunately, a mixed bag. We've seen actually a lot of public tension between the Federal Board of Governors in public speeches across the country, where some of them are very strongly against a rate cut, whereas some of them are very strongly for one. And this data we're getting today is going to help inform their decision on that. When you're looking at inflation, pessimism around job prospects or rate of pay, salary increases, that's something people are feeling pessimistic about. And so a potential cut could help with some of those things, but they ultimately have this dual mandate where they're trying to balance out both inflation and the labor market. And so we did hear from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent this morning in an interview. Obviously, he has no role in the decision around the rate cut, but he did have a very strong opinion about that he thinks it should happen. And he actually said he wants the Federal Reserve to kind of take a step back and not be so public about how they're discussing all of this. I want you to hear some of that interview.
I think that the mistake that we're seeing a lot of times is either looking in the rearview mirror. We're flying a little blind with the numbers here, but we've had 2 cuts thus far. And what do we know? That this Schumer shutdown, the longest in history, has shaved 1.5% off GDP, at least an $11 billion permanent hit. So we know the economy hasn't gotten better. So I'm not even sure what the discussion is here.
Now, the market is forecasting that it's more likely there will be a signal for a rate cut, but we'll just have to see in the next 2 weeks how that December meeting goes. But then in terms of your question about a recession, Secretary Bessent himself was the one that said that parts of the economy might be experiencing a recession soon. Analysts that I've spoken to and economists have said we're not exactly there yet. We're heading in that direction for sure, they say, but we're more so seeing kind of a rolling slowdown, but not full-on head speed into a recession. So if there's any good news in all this, I think there's that it's a little bit more prolonged going into the end of the year here, Del.
Scripps News business and tech correspondent Mara Barrett for us live in Denver. Mara, as always, we thank you.
Coming up on Today As It Happened.
I think we need health care insurance through the ACA. The ACA has been a remarkable success story in many ways. It could use improvement, but repealing it and providing just a health care account, I think, fails the test of whether it is adequate insurance.
And later,
306 Americans are suing a crypto platform they say helped facilitate the October 7th attacks. I'm Alex Miller in New York. What exactly they are alleging and the connection of the former CEO to the president.
welcome back to Today As It Happened, Scripps News end-of-day snapshot of our biggest stories of the day. So let's pick up right where we left off.
The Reverend Jesse Jackson's now out of the hospital. He's 84. He spent 12 days being watched for a neurodegenerative condition that affects his movement. Family sources say doctors also stabilized his blood pressure after a significant drop over the weekend. Remember that concept of a health care plan the president talked about during the debate? Well, it seems that now he has a plan and some in his own party don't like it. There was talk it would be rolled out this week and then it was pulled back. Scripps News congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed joins us now live. And Nate, why punt the announcement on a plan at this point?
There is just so much discord in Congress between Republicans, Democrats as well, about what to do on the issue of health care. Now, Democrats have largely rallied behind this idea of a clean extension of those Affordable Care Act tax credits, which were passed into law by President Joe Biden. Ultimately, they expire at the end of this year. If they are not renewed, those higher prices you're seeing through open enrollment, through healthcare.gov, if you don't get your insurance through your employer, they will remain higher. And again, there's less than a month, legislatively speaking, for them to deal with this. So a lot of questions about what the path forward is there. There were reports that President Trump this week was going to unveil effectively an extension of those very credits, coupled with the promise to try and do something more comprehensive on the issue of health care. But I mean, as many members of Congress as there are probably about 10 more opinions about what to do on health insurance, especially among Republicans who, as you and I both know, they've been trying to, for roughly the last 10 years or so, try and come up with some sort of alternative to the Affordable Care Act, first passed into law by President Barack Obama. In just the last couple minutes, though, we actually did see a bit, or what could be a breakthrough. Some Republicans on Capitol Hill issuing a statement led by the chairman of the Republican Main Street Caucus, Mike Flood, the Republican from Nebraska. He said, quote, "Main Street supports President Trump's ongoing efforts to address the ACA tax credit cliff with an extension. Any effort to address this cliff needs to include income caps and make serious reforms to the credits." Talks about waste, fraud, and abuse in these credits that Republicans believe exists. He continues, "Our caucus is committed to working with President Trump, our House leadership, continuing to find a solution that can pass Congress before the end of the year." So some caveats in there, wanting to make changes to the program, but interesting to see some Republicans lining up behind the idea of trying to fix those Affordable Care Act tax credits. Again, the issue of rising costs for voters, the year of the incredibly crucial midterm elections, to say, actually, no, you're going to pay this much more for health insurance, up to 114% more, according to the Kaiser Family Foundation. Certainly not palatable, especially for those swing seat Republicans who are just all too concerned about what voters could say in the 2026 election. And, you know, obviously this is something Democrats had made kind of nail in the coffin of their shutdown earlier this year, trying to push President Trump to do something on this. It appears that right as he was poised to introduce a legislative solution, may have been pulled back. Again, there's, I think, 210 Republican members of Congress. There's probably 215 different opinions about what to do.
You know, Republicans, as you mentioned, have been talking about repealing and replacing Obamacare now for the better part of 10 years.
Right.
Is this, what we just read, part of what would be a bipartisan solution? And is it just the fact that Obamacare is such a toxic word in Republican parties?
It certainly is a toxic word and something that Republicans have been looking to replace for a very long time. But I want to get back to this statement that I just talked about. The idea of including income caps. There are already some income caps on those Affordable Care Act tax credits, but making serious reforms to the credits, it all depends what those reforms look like. Senator Richard Blumenthal telling me last week he'd support an extension, but again, they want to see the finer point details of what does that extension look like? What are they removing? What are they replacing with? Take a listen.
I think we need health care insurance through the ACA. The ACA has been a remarkable success story in many ways. It could use improvement, but repealing it and providing just a health care account, I think, fails the test of whether it is adequate insurance.
And that reference he makes there to healthcare accounts, that's an idea from Senator Bill Cassidy, the Republican from Louisiana, chairman of the Senate Help Committee. It oversees healthcare, CDC, all of those agencies. The idea there is to try and take that money that was in the enhanced tax credits and put them directly toward health savings accounts to try and put that money back in Americans' pockets, help them pay for those higher insurance premiums. Again, that's just one of many ideas that have been circulated to try and find some sort of solution to
Every
this.
idea, though, seems to begin with kick the can down the road for at least 2 years. Our congressional correspondent, Nathaniel Reed. Nate, as always, thanks for being with us. Now to a developing story that we're looking at. Families of victims from that October 7th attack in Israel are now suing Binance. Binance is the world's largest cryptocurrency trading platform. Its founder was recently pardoned by President Trump. And now the families of those October 7th victims saying Binance helped smooth the transfer of more than $1 billion to the accounts of Hamas and other terror groups behind the attacks. Scripps News national correspondent Alex Miller is live in New York now with the latest. And Alex, what exactly does the lawsuit say?
Del, this is a very long lawsuit, 284 pages, that explains what these plaintiffs believe was the facilitation of money to multiple foreign terrorist organizations, not just Hamas, but also Hezbollah, the IRGC, which is Iran's military wing, as well as the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Not only did they say that Binance facilitated the transfer to and from these accounts, but they also said in one statement that I want to show you that when they found out that these accounts existed, they continued to enable them, saying in part, when specific customers were designated or particular accounts were subject to seizure orders, Binance allowed those customers and accounts to shift the assets into other Binance accounts, thus negating the effect of any blocking or seizing of the account. So essentially, they let it continue even when they knew about it. This lawsuit, Del, is filed in North Dakota. You might be asking yourself why. In part, it is because they found multiple Hamas-linked customers in North Dakota that executed multiple transactions.
As I was looking at that suit, it includes hundreds of families. You talked to one of the plaintiffs. I'm curious, how are they reacting?
Yeah, 306 Americans among those families. Remember, 1,200 people killed on that day. More than 36 of them were Americans, 12 Americans taken hostage. Now, these families range from survivors to the families of those who were murdered. Hirsch Goldberg Poland's family, his parents, his sisters are on this suit, as well as, if you remember, 3-year-old Avigal Idan. She was kidnapped. Her 6-year-old and 9-year-old siblings survived, watched their parents get murdered. They are also on this lawsuit, as is Ruby Chen. He is the father of the late Itai Chen. His remains returned just 3 weeks ago. I talked to him about adding his name and his family's name to this suit. Listen to what he said.
That financial platform that was created with no type of regulations was used for terrorist activities, and now that the owners of that entity should be liable for that. And 47 U.S. citizens were killed. And making sure that that does not happen again and that platform is not used for the benefit of terrorist organizations wherever that might harm U.S. citizens.
And when I spoke with Ruby, he said that this should really be a signal to Americans that you see this many people on a lawsuit, that this really could happen to anybody. He also told me, you know, they've been in contact with the White House, both Biden and Trump administrations throughout this entire ordeal. And he said he really hopes that the Department of Justice leans into this issue, particularly with finance. He says he wants to see more, I guess, attention from the Department of Justice, that they take these kinds of issues very seriously.
Alex, let's talk about the defendants, because as we pointed out, this is not the first time they or Binance has been in trouble with the law.
It's not, particularly the CEO of Binance. He was the co-founder, and now he is the former CEO, and that is because he was already found guilty of money laundering. He served 4 months in prison for that, and after he got out of prison, he was pardoned by President Trump. I think it's also noteworthy that Trump's company that he co-founded with his sons, as well as his envoy, Steve Witkoff, and his sons, they have done business with Binance that could amount to billions of dollars.
Scripps News national correspondent Alex Miller for us live in New York. 300 names on that lawsuit. Alex, as always, we thank you.
Straight ahead on Today As It Happened.
So Wicked fans made this movie one of the biggest hits of the year already, and made $150 million domestically.
Thanks again for joining us on Today As It Happened. I'm Stephanie Liebergen with your daily look at the day's biggest stories.
Another high-profile politician saying she is walking away from politics. This time it is Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser. Bowser has served 3 terms as the district's mayor. Her final year in office, though, has been difficult after the president seized control of the city's police force. The president also sending hundreds of National Guard troops into Washington for what the administration called a crime-fighting mission. The FBI contacting Democratic lawmakers who appeared in that social media video urging U.S. troops to defy, quote, illegal orders. Lawmakers saying the FBI reached out to schedule interviews. That signals a possible investigation. 4 Democratic House members releasing a statement saying President Trump is using the FBI as a tool to intimidate and harass members of Congress. The holidays aren't just about food and family. For lots of us, it's time to indulge in our favorite films. And if you're looking for something to watch, we got you covered. Nigel Smith is the senior movies editor with People. And Nigel, help us out. I want to go to the movies over the holiday weekend. Which ones are worth seeing in the theaters? And let me tell you right now, I've probably seen them.
Wicked for Good. Have you seen that one yet? That opened last week.
Went on Saturday. Loved it, to tell you the truth.
Loved it. Yeah, so Wicked fans made this movie one of the biggest hits of the year already, and made $150 million domestically in the first 3 days, which is breaking a record for a Broadway musical turned movie. And Wicked fans love to return to the cinemas and support the movie. So a lot of those fans are obviously going to be going back for a second time to see it this weekend. And a lot of people who couldn't get in last week because the movie proved to be so popular will be going over the Thanksgiving break with their families. That will be a big one. And then the biggest new release that you have over Thanksgiving weekend is one for the families. It's Zootopia 2. This is a sequel that Disney has waited for around 10 years to make. The first film was a huge hit. It came out in 2016, and it won the Oscar for Best Animated Film. Kids, adults alike love the movie. It's very, very smart. It's very colorful like the first one, and it deals with a similar story. Expect it to factor into the Oscars this year. And then you have a very, very different film opening this weekend. This is strictly for the adults. Do not bring your children to this. It's a movie called Hamnet. And if you have children, it's going to be a tough one to sit through, but I really do encourage you to make the effort. It stars Paul Mescal, who everyone loves. He plays William Shakespeare. And Jessie Buckley, who has come out as a frontrunner for the Best Actress Oscar, plays his wife, and it deals with the death of a child. So it's a tough watch, but a very, very rewarding one.
Nigel, I want to circle back to Wicked, because here was the question that we had going into it. I've got 4 granddaughters. They loved Wicked, the movie. Is this one for kids?
Well, I don't have any children, but I know some parents at the people offices who do, and they express some reserve over some would say they're not graphic, but there's a little bit of body horror that goes on. I don't want to give away any spoilers, but some characters become characters from The Wizard of Oz, and it might be a little scary for the kids. And the ending is quite emotional. And if the children are aware of what's going on, it might be a little traumatic for them.
Yeah, there was a 20-year-old kid sitting next to us sobbing like a baby, but that's a story for another day. Let's say going to the theater is out of question. What about some of your top streaming picks over the holiday weekend?
Yeah, luckily for those who want to stay home, there are a lot of great films available for streaming on places like Netflix and HBO Max. And one I recommend is a smaller film that some people probably just aren't aware of. It's called Train Dreams. It's available on Netflix, and I think it could be a major Oscar player early next year. It stars Joel Edgerton, who is such a fantastic actor, and he plays a man just trying to make a life for himself and his family in the turn of the 20th century. It's set in the forests in this Pacific Northwest, and it's beautifully shot and incredibly acted. Really recommend that one. Also on Netflix, you have Frankenstein, which many people have already seen, but it's definitely worth a rewatch or a watch if you haven't seen it yet. It's, of course, Guillermo del Toro's long gestating adaptation of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and it features Jacob Elordi in a really surprising and touching performance as the creature, and Oscar Isaac as his maker. And then over on HBO Max, you have a little bit of a Halloween film there. It's called The Conjuring Last Rites. It's allegedly the last movie in the franchise, but considering the movie broke box office records and became the highest grossing Conjuring movie of all time, there might be another one. But that one is really, really good if you want to watch a scary movie with your family and scream and laugh. And then for the family, a more appropriate film for the children, you have Freaky Friday. That is on Disney Plus, and that's, of course, the sequel to the original Freaky Friday. You have Jamie Lee Curtis and Lindsay Lohan back for more body swapping mischief, and it's just a really, really great nostalgia-fueled good time.
Nigel Smith, senior movies editor with People. Nigel, I will see you at the movies. I'm buying popcorn. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Coming up on Today As It Happened.
Ukraine has the framework developed by our teams in Geneva. That framework is on the table, and we are ready to move forward together with the United States of America, with personal engagement of President Trump, and with Europe, with leaders, and with all partners who have the strengths and capacity to help. And I'm ready to meet with President Trump.
Welcome back to Today's It Happened. I'm Stephanie Liebergen. Let's jump right back into our rundown of today's top stories.
There is optimism coming out of the White House about the war in Ukraine, even as Russia continues its nonstop assault on that country. Peace talks to end the war continue, but they come against the backdrop of 7 more deaths in Kyiv. Russia's targets the nation's energy infrastructure. Now, as for that peace deal, it appears that Ukraine is willing to move forward. And a short while ago, we might have just heard from Russia. Scripps News White House correspondent Haley Bull is live on the North Lawn. And Haley, we understand the president is now directing his team on negotiating an end to the war. What does that effort look like, and where do things stand right now?
The president is touting what he calls tremendous progress towards ending the war, Dell. The president announcing he's directing Special Envoy Steve Witkoff to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow, while directing Secretary of the Army Dan Driscoll to meet with the Ukrainians. The president writing on Truth Social, quote, "I look forward to hopefully meeting with President Zelenskyy and President Putin soon, but only when the deal to end this war is final or in its final stages." This comes as we have seen a flurry of engagements dealt with both sides. The U.S. meeting with the Ukrainians in Geneva over the weekend after Driscoll met with the Ukrainians last weekend. We understand engaged with Russian counterparts today. This comes after the U.S. had put forward an initial 28-point plan and had been quietly working on that initially drew criticism from some lawmakers, allies, and experts over concerns it favored Russia. Since then, we have seen that plan be refined. The president, in his update, saying that the original plan had been fine-tuned with input from both sides, with only a few remaining points of disagreement. The White House earlier indicating that they believe the details that still needed to be sorted were not insurmountable, but would just need further talks, echoing a similar statement from Secretary of State Marco Rubio earlier in the week. We are told from an administration official that they feel this is the most positive it's ever been. And part of the reasoning for that is because the points have been more defined. We are hearing from the Ukrainians today, a top Ukrainian official saying that they had reached what they called a common understanding on key terms of the agreement. This as the Ukrainians have been pushing for Zelenskyy to meet with President Trump. Zelenskyy suggesting that he wants to discuss some of the sensitive points with the U.S. president, saying the, quote, principles in the document can be developed into deeper agreements, noting that he's counting on continued cooperation from President Trump. Meanwhile, as all of this is going on today, Del, Secretary of State Marco Rubio also engaging with European allies as part of what they call the Coalition of the Willing. In a joint statement between the chairs of that meeting, France, Germany, and the United Kingdom indicated in those conversations underscoring considerations on the use of frozen Russian assets, security guarantees, and separate discussions on European and NATO interests. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer saying this, though, of where the Ukrainians stand.
I do think we're moving in a positive direction, and indications today that in large part the majority of the text looks as though Volodymyr is indicating can be accepted. Ukraine is holding the line fearlessly, and it's the line of their sovereignty and their defense, but it's also our line as well, because this is about European freedom, our values and our security.
And Del, as this is all going on, though, Russia has continued its assault on Ukraine, hitting civilian and energy infrastructure, including in Ukraine's capital city of Kyiv overnight. It remains to be seen the Russian response here. Earlier this week, statements from officials had indicated that they had not abandoned their demand for what they call the root causes of this to be solved. So a lot on the line, but certainly a big sense of optimism from the Trump administration on this.
Scripps News White House correspondent Haley Bowforce live on the North Lawn. Haley, as always, we thank you.
Thank you for spending some of your evening with Today's It Happened. I'm Stephanie Liebergen, and have an excellent Tuesday night.